the alarm clock doesn't wake you, you haven't slept. It's 3:45 a.m. on a bitter English morning in October 1943, and your Nissen hut is so cold you can see your breath forming little clouds in the darkness. You're lying on a cot that feels like it's made of concrete and chicken wire, still wearing most of your clothes because the single pot-bellied stove in the corner gave up trying to heat this corrugated metal tomb hours ago. Around you, 23 other men are stirring, groaning, coughing up the effects of yesterday's cigarettes and that peculiar dampness that seeps into everything at this Royal Air Force base in East Anglia. You swing your feet onto the floor, onto the puddle that's formed on the floor, because these huts leak like a congressman's promises. Someone lights a kerosene lamp, casting weird shadows that make everyone look like ghosts, which might be prophetic considering the statistics. You've been here 6 weeks, flown 7 missions, and already 4 of your original training class are gone. Not transferred, not sent home, gone. The math is simple and terrifying. 25 missions to complete your tour, and the loss rate means you have about a 1 in 4 chance of making it. The mess hall is a 5-minute stumble through mud that's legendary. This particular variety of English mud has the consistency of cake batter mixed with motor oil. You file through the chow line where Cookie, a sadistic genius from Brooklyn, has prepared his specialty: powdered eggs that taste like sulfur, mystery meat that might be spam or might be something the RAF rejected, and coffee strong enough to strip paint. You force it down because you need the calories. At 25,000 feet, your body will burn through energy like a furnace just trying to stay warm. Some guys can't eat before a mission, but you've learned that air sickness on an empty stomach is worse than air sickness with breakfast. The briefing room is your next stop, and this is where the day gets real. You file in with about 200 other aircrew, finding a wooden bench that's been polished smooth by the backsides of men who sat here before you, some who made it home, many who didn't. Colonel Harrison stands at the front like a funeral director, waiting for everyone to settle. Behind him, a curtain covers the mission map. That curtain is like Schrodinger's cat. Until it opens, you're both alive and dead, heading to either a milk run over France or a suicide mission to Berlin. The curtain pulls back. The red yarn stretches from your base all the way to Schweinfurt. The room erupts in groans, curses, and at least one man saying what everyone's thinking: "We're gonna die today." Schweinfurt means ball-bearing factories, which means the Germans will defend it like it's Hitler's personal bathroom. You've heard the stories from the August raid: 60 bombers lost out of 376. That's not a mission, that's a massacre. But here's the thing historians still argue about. Was the near destruction of the ball-bearing plants worth losing 600 airmen? Command says yes. The empty bunks in your hut suggest otherwise. The intelligence officer starts his briefing with all the enthusiasm of someone describing different varieties of cement. Gentlemen, your target for today is the Vereinigte Kugellager Fabrikworks at Schweinfurt. You can expect moderate to heavy flak over the target. Moderate to heavy, military speak for the sky will be black with explosions. He continues with weather reports: terrible. Fighter escort availability, minimal. An expected enemy fighter response overwhelming. You're scribbling notes on your knee pad, but really, you're thinking about that girl back in Iowa who writes you letters that smell like lavender and promises to wait for you. Major Thompson takes over for the tactical briefing. He's one of the old men, been here 4 months, flown 18 missions, which makes him practically immortal. Formation integrity is crucial. Gentlemen, stay tight. Stragglers get picked off. He points to positions on a model showing how your bomb group will fit into the larger puzzle of the 8th Air Force's maximum effort. You'll be in the low squadron of the lead group, which means you're bait. German fighters love attacking from below where your defensive guns have limited angles. The briefing drones on, navigation checkpoints, radio frequencies, emergency procedures. You learn your specific aircraft assignment. Bourbon Betty, a B-17F that somehow survived 31 missions despite having more patches than original aluminum. Your pilot, Lieutenant Collins, is 22 years old and has been flying combat for 6 weeks, which makes him a veteran. The average age in this room is 20. You're all children pretending to be warriors, but the war doesn't care about your age, only your ability to put bombs on target. Time hack, 0453 hours. In exactly 3 hours and 7 minutes, you'll be airborne, climbing into the substratosphere where the air is too thin to breathe and cold enough to freeze your spit before it leaves your mouth. The chaplain offers a prayer that everyone pretends not to need desperately. Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, doesn't matter up there. Flak is non-denominational. You trudge back to the equipment room, and this is where things get medieval. The amount of gear you need to survive a high-altitude bombing mission would make a deep-sea diver jealous. First comes the long underwear, silk if you're lucky, wool if you're not. And trust me, wool against your skin for 8 hours is its own kind of torture. Over that goes your olive drab uniform. Then the electric heated suit, which is basically long johns with wires running through them like the world's most dangerous electric blanket. One short circuit and you're barbecued at 20,000 feet. The heated suit plugs into the bomber's electrical system, assuming the system works, which it does about half the time. Veterans tell you to wear extra layers underneath because when the heating fails, not if when, you'll need every bit of insulation you can get. The irony is thick. You're flying in a machine powered by 4 massive engines generating tremendous heat. Yet you'll be colder than you've ever been in your life. Physics is cruel that way. All that engine heat dissipates into the atmosphere while you're huddled in an aluminum tube with the insulation properties of a beer can. Next comes the leather flight jacket, the A2 that everyone tries to make look worn and experienced, even if they're fresh from training. Yours has your squadron patch, blood chit sewn inside, a note in multiple languages promising a reward to anyone who helps you if you're shot down, and a small photo of that Iowa girl tucked into the inside pocket. Over this goes the sheepskin-lined B-3 jacket that makes you look like a flying grizzly bear. It weighs about 10 pounds dry, 15 when it's soaked with sweat and condensation, which it will be. The pants situation is equally ridiculous. Heated trouser liners, regular flight pants, then the sheepskin B-3 pants that zip up the sides because once you're dressed, bending over becomes physically impossible. You're starting to waddle like a penguin, and you haven't even gotten to the serious gear yet. Your feet get silk socks, wool socks, electric heated socks, more wires to fail, and then fleece-lined boots that look like they were designed for Arctic expeditions, which essentially they were. Now for the life-saving equipment that might kill you. Mae West Life Vest goes on next. Bright yellow and inflatable. Named after the actress because when inflated, it gives you an impressive chest. The British crews joke that it's the only woman most of you will get close to during the war. Dark humour, but humour nonetheless. Problem is, if you bail out over the North Sea in winter, the Mae West just ensures they'll find your body floating instead of sinking. Water temperature gives you about 4 minutes before hypothermia makes swimming academic. Parachute harness comes next, and this is where things get interesting. Chest-type chute for gunners and bombardiers who need to move around. Back-type for pilots who sit down. The harness straps are designed by someone who clearly hated human anatomy. They dig into places you didn't know you had, and after 8 hours, you'll have bruises in locations that would make a contortionist wince. The chute itself weighs 30 pounds and has to be worn the entire mission, because at 25,000 feet, you have maybe 15 seconds to get out if things go wrong. Flak vest time. A delightful garment that weighs 25 pounds and provides protection against shrapnel from approximately your collarbone to your belly button. Your arms, legs, head, and everything below the belt are on their own. Historians still debate whether these vests saved more lives than they cost through crew exhaustion and restricted movement. One thing certain, after wearing one for 8 hours, you'll have back problems that would make a 90-year-old feel young. The helmet situation is equally special. Leather flying helmet first, with built-in headphones that will spend the next 8 hours crushing your ears. Over that goes the steel helmet, the M3 flak helmet that looks like something a medieval knight would wear if he'd been designed by committee. It's heavy, limits your vision, and turns your head into a bell that rings every time flak explodes nearby. But it might stop a piece of shrapnel from turning your skull into a colander. So you wear it. Oxygen mask next. And this is genuinely life or death equipment. Above 10,000 feet, you need supplemental oxygen. Above 20,000 feet, you need it constantly or you'll pass out in minutes. The mask is rubber, smells like a tire factory, and has to fit perfectly or you'll get frostbite on your face. The microphone is built into the mask, which means every transmission sounds like you're talking through a sock full of marbles. Pilot to bombardier becomes pt, bum, duh. Gloves are a 3-layer affair. Silk liners for dexterity, wool mittens for warmth, and leather gauntlets that extend halfway up your forearms. Try loading a .50 caliber machine gun while wearing oven mitts in a freezer. That's the level of dexterity you're working with. Some gunners cut the trigger finger off their gloves for better control, trading frostbite for accuracy. By the time they land, that finger is usually white and dead-looking. But hey, at least they could shoot straight. Finally, the survival gear, escape kit with compass, maps, money, and benzodrine tablets. Speed, basically, to keep you moving if you're shot down. First aid kit with morphine syrettes that will freeze solid at altitude, and a .45 pistol that's more psychological comfort than practical weapon. If you bail out over Germany, that pistol won't save you from the Wehrmacht, but it might convince frightened farmers not to pitchfork you before the authorities arrive. You waddle out to the hardstand where Bourbon Betty squats like a prehistoric bird, her olive drab paint job scarred by flak damage and hasty repairs. In the pre-dawn darkness, she looks more menacing than protective. All angles and gun barrels and patched aluminum skin. The ground crew has been working on her all night. You can smell the fresh hydraulic fluid and see where they've riveted new patches over yesterday's flak holes. One of the mechanics, a kid from Detroit who can't be more than 18, gives you a thumbs up. "She'll hold together," he says, which isn't exactly the ringing endorsement you'd hoped for. You climb through the rear hatch, and immediately the smell hits you. A combination of hydraulic fluid, gunpowder residue, vomit that no amount of cleaning can fully remove, and that peculiar metallic scent of aluminum under stress. The inside of a B-17 is nothing like those recruiting posters showing spacious, well-lit interiors. It's a cramped tube filled with sharp edges, exposed cables, and equipment that seems designed to snag every piece of your clothing. The floor is corrugated aluminum that's slick with oil and whatever else has leaked, dripped, or been spilled during previous missions. Your position today is left waist gunner, which means you'll spend the next 8 hours standing at an open window at 25,000 feet, wrestling with a 50 caliber machine gun that weighs more than a small child. The gun position is just a hole in the fuselage with a pintle mount for the weapon. No seat, no protection except your flak vest, and definitely no comfort. The window has a plexiglass cover that can be slid back, but once you're at altitude and in combat, it stays open. That means you're essentially standing in a 200-mile-per-hour wind at temperatures that would make Antarctica feel tropical. You check your gun, running through the ritual that's been drilled into you. Action smooth, ammunition feed clear, spare barrels secured. Each gun has 500 rounds, which sounds like a lot until you realize that's about 40 seconds of continuous firing. In combat, you'll burn through ammunition like candy at a kid's party. The gun itself is a Browning M2, a design so good they're still using it decades later. But right now, it's just 84 pounds of steel that you'll have to swing around while wearing gloves that make you feel like Mickey Mouse. Moving forward through the bomber is an exercise in contortion. The bomb bay takes up the middle of the aircraft, so you have to traverse a catwalk that's 8 inches wide with nothing but 20,000 feet of air below you once you're airborne. Some crews string a rope along the catwalk after one too many guys slipped and found themselves riding the bomb bay doors. The bombs themselves are already loaded, 10 500-pounders nestled in their racks like giant steel eggs. Each one is stenciled with chalked messages. From Brooklyn with love, Hitler's hemorrhoid cream, and other motivational phrases. The radio operator's compartment is next, cramped with equipment that looks like it was designed by someone who never met a human being. Sergeant Morrison is already at his station, tapping out Morse code to test his equipment. He's been flying for 4 months, which makes him ancient by combat aircrew standards. Another milk run to Schweinfurt, he says without looking up, his voice dripping with the kind of sarcasm that only comes from having seen too many friends not come back. You squeeze past him to check out the ball turret, the most terrifying position on the entire aircraft. It's a plexiglass and aluminum sphere that hangs from the belly of the bomber, just big enough for one small man and 2 50 caliber guns. The ball turret gunner, today it's Sergeant Kowalski, 5'4" and 90 pounds soaking wet, has to curl up in a fetal position for the entire mission. If the hydraulics fail, he can't get out. If you have to bail out, he's trapped. If you belly land, he gets crushed. Kowalski is already folded into his sphere, running through his pre-flight checks with the calm of someone who's accepted his fate. The top turret position behind the cockpit belongs to the engineer, Technical Sergeant Rodriguez. His job is equal parts gunner and miracle worker, keeping the bomber's systems running while simultaneously fighting off German fighters. He's got the best view in the house, a 360-degree panorama of sky, which also means he sees every fighter coming in and every bomber going down. Rodriguez has a theory that the Germans specifically target engineers because without them, the bomber can't make it home. Paranoid? Maybe, but paranoia has kept him alive for 19 missions, up in the nose, separated from the rest of the plane by a narrow crawlway. The bombardier and navigator have what looks like the best seats, plexiglass greenhouse with panoramic views. What the recruiting posters don't mention is that all that plexiglass makes them sitting ducks. German fighter pilots love head-on attacks because they can see the terrified faces of the bombardier and navigator just before they open fire. Lieutenant Patterson, today's bombardier, is calmly adjusting his Norden bomb sight, a piece of equipment so secret he's sworn to destroy it rather than let it fall into enemy hands. The irony is that the Germans already have the plans, courtesy of aspiring, but nobody's told Patterson that. The navigator, Lieutenant Chen, one of the few Chinese Americans in the 8th Air Force, is already plotting courses on his charts. He's got the impossible job of getting you to the target and back using dead reckoning, radio beacons that may or may not be working, and celestial navigation when you can see the stars. Given that you'll be flying through weather that would ground modern commercial aircraft, using instruments that belong in a museum, his job is essentially educated guessing at 300 miles per hour. The pilot and co-pilot are going through their pre-flight checklist when you squeeze into the cockpit to check in. Lieutenant Collins looks like he should be playing high school football, not commanding a 10-man crew and 65,000 pounds of aluminum death machine. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Kaczynski, is even younger, with acne scars still visible under his oxygen mask. They're running through startup procedures with the mechanical precision of people who know that one missed step could kill everyone aboard. Fuel, 2,780 gallons. Oil pressure, normal all engines. The ritual continues while outside. The sound of Wright Cyclone engines coughing to life fills the pre-dawn air like a symphony of controlled explosions. You scramble back to your position as the engines catch one by one. Each engine is a 9-cylinder radial monster producing 1 ton 200 horsepower. And when all 4 are running, the entire bomber vibrates like a paint mixer. The noise is beyond deafening. It's a physical force that pounds through your chest and makes your teeth ache. This is before you even put on the headphones that will spend the next 8 hours compressing your skull. The intercom crackles to life. Crew, pilot, check in. One by one, each position reports ready. Voices already taking on that tinny, distorted quality that will define communication for the rest of the mission. Outside your gun window, you watch the ballet of death begin. Across the airfield, dozens of B-17s are starting engines, their props creating mini hurricanes that blow dust and debris in all directions. Ground crews scurry away from the aircraft like ants fleeing a disaster. Each bomber carries 2,780 gallons of high-octane fuel, 6,000 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition, and 5,000 pounds of high explosives. You're essentially sitting in a flying bomb factory. And now 48 of these flying bombs need to take off in sequence without colliding, exploding, or having an engine failure at the worst possible moment. The tower frequency is chaos. Controllers trying to sequence 4 dozen bombers for takeoff while dealing with last-minute mechanical problems, weather updates, and the occasional emergency. Blue leader, you're cleared to taxi. Roger Tower, blue leader taxiing. Red 3, hold your position. You've got smoke from number 2 engine. Tower, Red 3, that's just oil burning off. The conversations are clipped, professional, but underneath you can hear the tension. Everyone knows that takeoff is one of the most dangerous parts of the mission. Lose an engine on takeoff with a full fuel and bomb load, and you're basically a very expensive lawn dart. Bourbon, Betty lurches forward as Collins advances the throttles. The taxi to the runway is a tooth-rattling journey over concrete joints and patches. Through your window, you see other bombers converging on the runway like a parade of drunken elephants. The control surfaces move as pilots check their responsiveness. Rudders wagging, elevators dipping, ailerons seesawing. It's both reassuring and terrifying to see these massive machines performing their mechanical ballet. A B-17 ahead of you has Hell's Angels painted on the nose, along with 23 bomb symbols. 23 missions survived. You wonder if they'll make 24. You reach the runway threshold and hold. The bomber ahead, pistol packing mama, thunders down the runway. 4 engines at maximum power, creating a sound like the world tearing apart. She uses every inch of the 6,000-foot runway before her wheels finally leave the ground, climbing painfully slowly with her load of death and destruction. Bourbon Betty, you're cleared for takeoff, the tower announces with the casual tone of someone ordering coffee. Collins advances the throttles, and suddenly you're pressed against the fuselage as 4,800 horsepower tries to overcome gravity, inertia, and common sense. The takeoff roll in a loaded B-17 is an exercise in faith over physics. The runway markers flash past, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet, and you're still firmly planted on the ground. The tail comes up first, giving you an even better view of the runway racing beneath you at increasing speed. 4,000 feet. The vibration is incredible, like riding inside a cement mixer full of hammers. 5,000 feet. Collins is pulling back on the yoke, and finally, you feel that distinctive lightness as the wheels leave the ground, but you're not celebrating yet. The bomber climbs like a fat man on stairs, engines straining, props clawing at the air for every foot of altitude. This is when things go wrong. The bomber ahead and to your right. Lucky strike. Suddenly yours left, number 3 engine trailing black smoke. The pilot is fighting to control 32 tons of airplane that suddenly wants to turn in circles. Lucky strike's got engine failure, someone calls on the radio. You watch, helpless, as the pilot makes the impossible choice. Try to continue on 3 engines or abort with a full bomb load. He chooses to abort, banking carefully away from the formation. That's 10 men who won't see Schweinfurt today. Lucky? Maybe. Or maybe they'll try again tomorrow and not come back at all. The climb to assembly altitude is a grinding, fuel-burning marathon. The engines are at maximum continuous power. Cylinder head temperatures dancing at the red line. Every pound of weight matters now. Historians still argue whether the armor plating added to protect crews was worth the performance penalty. You're climbing at maybe 300 feet per minute, which means it'll take over an hour to reach your cruising altitude of 25,000 feet. All around you, bombers are clawing for altitude, some trailing smoke, others falling behind as engines overheat or fail. At 10,000 feet, the order comes. Oxygen masks on, the rubber tastes like a tire factory, and immediately your breathing becomes conscious, deliberate. Suck in, breathe out. Check the flow indicator. The temperature is already dropping precipitously. Your breath fogs the inside of your mask until ice crystals form. This is your life now, monitoring your oxygen, scanning for fighters, trying to keep your extremities from freezing, all while standing at an open window in what amounts to an industrial freezer moving at 180 miles per hour. 20 minutes into the climb, you're circling over East Anglia in what can only be described as organized chaos. The assembly point is a radio beacon transmitting a steady signal, and around it, like moths to a very dangerous flame, dozens of bombers are trying to find their assigned positions. Each bomb group has its own assembly altitude and pattern, but with reduced visibility and everyone burning fuel at a prodigious rate. It's like trying to organize a parade in a blizzard while riding unicycles. Your bomb group is supposed to form up at 18,000 feet, but half the planes are still struggling to reach 15,000. The radio chatter is constant. Blue leader, this is Blue 3. I've got you in sight. Negative, Blue 3. That's red leader. Where the hell is Blue leader? Blue leader here, orbiting at Angels 18, firing flares now. A green flare arcs across the grey morning sky, and suddenly every bomber in the area is converging on that point, like sharks to blood. The problem is, other groups are firing flares too, red, yellow, white, turning the sky into a deadly fireworks show where collision is a constant threat. You spot another B-17 sliding in from your 7 o'clock, way too close. You key the intercom. Waste a pilot. Fort at 7 o'clock. 50 yards and closing. Collins banks right, barely avoiding what would have been an aluminum shredding collision. The other bomber slides past, close enough that you can see the waist gunner's white face through his window. He gives you a thumbs up, the universal aviator's signal for, "Hey, we almost died but didn't." The near misses are constant, with dozens of bombers maneuvering in a confined space, all burning fuel they can't spare. It's a miracle more don't collide. Formation assembly is where the 8th Air Force learned some hard lessons written in blood and aluminum. Early in the war, loose formations meant easy pickings for German fighters. Now, the doctrine calls for tight, combat box formations, staggered altitudes and positions that create interlocking fields of fire. In theory, it's brilliant. In practice, it means flying so close to other bombers that you can count the rivets on their fuselages. The lead squadron forms up first. Then the high squadron takes position above and behind. Finally, the low squadron, that's you, slides in below and behind. You're now flying in formation with 17 other bombers in your group, and your group is just one of many. The fuel situation is already critical. You've been airborne for 45 minutes and haven't even left English airspace. The formation assembly has burned through 300 gallons, enough fuel to fly 150 miles toward the target. This is the cruel mathematics of bomber operations. Every minute spent forming up is distance you can't fly into Germany. Some crews are already calling in with fuel concerns. Lead, this is Purple 3, showing 200 gallons remaining. That's barely enough to make Schweinfurt and back, assuming everything goes perfectly. Nothing ever goes perfectly. Lieutenant Chen's voice comes over the intercom. "Navigator to crew, we're running 15 minutes behind schedule." 15 minutes might not sound like much, but it means your fighter escort, those precious P-47 Thunderbolts that can only fly as far as the German border, will have to turn back 15 minutes earlier in terms of distance covered. You'll be naked and alone that much sooner. The Germans know our fighter ranged to the mile and wait just beyond it like wolves at the edge of firelight. Finally, miraculously, the formation achieves something resembling order. 3 groups of bombers, each with 18 to 21 aircraft, arranged in a massive combat wing stretching over a mile of sky. From your position in the low squadron, you look up at a ceiling of bombers, each one trailing 4 condensation streams that mark your path across the sky like arrows pointing to your destination. The contrails are beautiful and deadly. They can be seen for 50 miles, announcing your presence to every fighter base in Western Europe. Pilot to crew, we're departing assembly area. Keep your eyes open. The formation wheels eastward, beginning the long journey across the North Sea. You're at 22,000 feet now, still climbing slowly. The temperature at your gun position is minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Your electric suit is working, sort of. You can feel warmth in your torso, but your extremities are already going numb. Ice is forming on everything, your gun, your mask, the walls of the aircraft. Every few minutes, you have to break ice off your gun's action to keep it operational. The intercom discipline starts to break down as boredom sets in. "Hey Rodriguez, you still alive up there?" "Alive and freezing my arse off." "Cut the chatter," Colin snaps. But there's no real heat in it. Everyone knows that silence is worse than chatter. Silence means you're alone with your thoughts, calculating odds, remembering the empty bunks back at base. The drone of the engines becomes hypnotic, a constant thrumming that seems to sync with your heartbeat. You scan your assigned sector of sky, looking for the black specks that will grow into German fighters. Below, the North Sea stretches endlessly, grey-green and hostile. Historians debate whether the water or the fighters killed more airmen. If you go down in the channel, air-sea rescue might find you, out here, over the North Sea. You're just another casualty of statistics. The Mae West will keep you floating for about as long as it takes to freeze to death. Some crews carry pigeons for sending position reports if they ditch. The pigeons usually freeze solid at altitude, becoming feathered ice sculptures. Dark humor suggests using them as weapons. Frozen pigeons dropped from 25,000 feet could probably penetrate a Tiger tank. "Oxygen check," comes the call, and everyone reports in. This ritual will repeat every few minutes because above 20,000 feet, hypoxia is a constant threat. Lose your oxygen, and you've got maybe 2 minutes before you pass out. The first sign is euphoria. You feel wonderful, invincible, like you could fly without the airplane. Then your fingernails turn blue, your vision tunnels, and you're unconscious. By the time your crew notices you're not responding, you're probably dead. The B-17 is an unforgiving workplace where a kinked oxygen hose means death, and a stuck relief valve means frostbite. The Dutch coast appears as a thin brown line on the horizon, and immediately the atmosphere in Bourbon Betty changes. You're leaving the relative safety of the North Sea and entering the Reich's aerial defense network, a sophisticated system of radar stations, fighter bases, and anti-aircraft batteries that makes your formation look like ducks in a shooting gallery. Pilot to crew, we're crossing the enemy coast. Gunners test your weapons. The staccato bark of 1050 caliber machine guns firing test bursts fills the air, brass casings tinkling across the aluminum floor like deadly wind chimes. You swing your gun through its arc, making sure it moves freely despite the ice building up on every surface. Through your window, you can see the other bombers in your element, their guns also swiveling, looking for threats that haven't appeared yet but certainly will. The waiting is the worst part. You know they're coming. German radar has been tracking you since you formed up over England. Right now, fighter controllers are vectoring interceptors to your position, calculating your course, your speed, your probable target. You're playing a deadly game of chess at 180 miles per hour. Fighters, 2 o'clock high. The call you've been dreading comes from the tail gunner. You crane your neck, searching the sky. And there they are, a staffel of Messerschmitt Bf-109s. 12 aircraft in perfect formation, paralleling your course but staying just out of range. They're like sharks sizing up their prey, looking for weakness, waiting for the perfect moment to attack. The 109s are beautiful in a lethal way. Painted in mottled grey camouflage, their yellow noses marking them as elite units. These aren't rookies. These are experten aces who've been hunting bombers since the war began. The German fighters maintain their distance, climbing steadily. They know your defensive fire is most effective at close range, so they'll climb above you. Use their superior altitude to build speed. Then slash through your formation in high-speed passes. It's energy fighting at its purest, trading altitude for speed, speed for position, position for kills. Your neck is already sore from constantly scanning the sky. The human eye is remarkably bad at spotting objects against a featureless background. So you use tricks, focus on infinity, then let your peripheral vision catch movement. Little friends, 11 o'clock level. Someone spots your fighter escort. P-47 Thunderbolts of the 56th Fighter Group. Stocky fighters that look like flying milk bottles compared to the sleek German aircraft. The P-47s are at the extreme limit of their range. External fuel tanks hanging like silver teardrops under their wings. In about 20 minutes, they'll have to turn back, leaving you naked. The German fighters know this too. They're waiting, patient as spiders. The sight of the Thunderbolts is momentarily reassuring, but everyone knows this protection is temporary. Suddenly, the 109s break formation, rolling inverted and diving toward a bomber group ahead of yours. You watch, helpless, as they streak through the formation at 400 miles per hour, cannon and machine guns blazing. A B-17 in the high squadron suddenly streams fire from its number 3 engine. The flame grows, fed by high-octane fuel and 180 mile per hour wind. Within seconds, the fire reaches the fuel tanks in the wing. The explosion is horrific. The entire wing separates from the fuselage, and the bomber enters a flat spin, falling like a maple seed. No parachutes. 10 men gone in less than 30 seconds. The intercom explodes with voices. Jesus Christ! Did you see that? Cut the chatter. Fighters breaking low. Your training kicks in as you track a 109 curving toward your formation. The trick is to lead the target. At these speeds and distances, you're not shooting at where the fighter is, but where it will be when your bullets arrive. You squeeze off a burst, the gun bucking against your shoulder, tracer rounds arcing through the sky like deadly fireworks. Miss. The 109 flashes past. So close you can see the pilot's head turn to look at you. Your bullets didn't even make him flinch. More fighters appear. Focke-Wulf 190s this time. Radial-engined brutes that can take tremendous punishment. They're setting up for a head-on attack. The most terrifying of all fighter tactics. 4 190s line up in trail, pointing directly at your formation's nose. They'll come in at a combined closing speed of over 500 miles per hour, firing at the last second, then pull up and over the formation. The bombardiers and navigators in the nose positions are about to earn their hazard pay. You can't help them. Your gun won't bear that far forward. The attack comes like lightning. The lead 190 opens fire at 1,000 yards. His 4 20mm cannon and 2 machine guns sparkling like lethal Christmas lights. You see the shells marching through the air, aerial torpedoes that explode on impact. The number 2 bomber in your element. Shady Lady takes multiple hits in the nose. The plexiglass greenhouse disintegrates, and you know the bombardier and navigator are gone. The 190 pulls up at the last second, showing its yellow belly as it zooms over the formation. The tail gunner gets in a good burst, and you see pieces flying off the German fighter, but it keeps climbing. Your P-47 escort finally engages, diving on the German fighters with their 850 caliber guns blazing. A 109 comes apart in mid-air, its pilot tumbling free, but his parachute failing to open. At this temperature, the silk might be frozen solid. Another German fighter trails glycol smoke and begins the long glide toward home. But for every German fighter the P-47s drive off, 2 more seem to appear. The math is simple and terrible. They can replace their fighters faster than you can replace your bombers. Pilot to crew, escorts are turning back. Colin's voice is flat, emotionless. You watch the P-47s waggle their wings in farewell, then bank westward toward England and safety. You're now 200 miles inside enemy territory with nothing but your guns and prayers for protection. The German fighters, who've been hovering like vultures, immediately become more aggressive. They know you're helpless now. A formation of fat targets lumbering toward their homeland. The real killing is about to begin. The first flak appears as innocent-looking black puffs ahead of the formation, like cotton balls dipped in ink. Then the sound reaches you, a sharp crump that penetrates even through the engine noise in your helmet. The explosions multiply rapidly until the sky ahead looks like a pointillist painting done in black smoke and orange fire. You're entering the flak belt around Osnabrück, where the Germans have concentrated hundreds of 18mm and 105mm anti-aircraft guns. Welcome to the most expensive fireworks show on Earth. Except you're not watching, you're the target. Flak is different from fighters. With fighters, you can shoot back, take evasive action, use tactics. Flak is pure mathematics and chance. The German gunners use predictors, mechanical computers that calculate where you'll be based on your altitude, speed, and heading. They fire shells timed to explode at precise altitudes, creating a box of death you have to fly through. The name says it all. Fliegerabwehrkanone, aircraft defense cannon. Each shell throws out 1,500 pieces of shrapnel in a lethal sphere. Get within 30 feet of an explosion, and you're Swiss cheese. Lead is taking evasive action, someone calls, and the formation begins a gentle weave. Gentle because violent maneuvers would break up the defensive box, making you easy prey for fighters. But the weaving is mostly psychological, at your altitude and speed. The shells fired at where you are now will explode where you were 3 seconds ago. By the time you see the burst, the shrapnel that might have killed you has already missed or hit. The randomness is maddening. You could fly straight and level through the heaviest barrage and emerge unscathed. Or a single shell could find you on a milk run. A burst explodes dead ahead, close enough that you feel the concussion through the aircraft's structure. Shrapnel rattles against Bourbon Betty's skin like hail on a tin roof. Through your window, you see a piece of German steel embedded in the fuselage 6 inches from where your head was a second ago. It's still glowing red from the explosion. The metal around it is peppered with smaller holes, each one a reminder that your flying aluminum offers about as much protection as tissue paper. Navigator to pilot. Recommend heading 175 to avoid heaviest concentration. Chen is trying to thread the needle between flak batteries, but the Germans are smart. They've positioned their guns to create overlapping fields of fire around key targets. No matter which way you turn, you're in somebody's crosshairs. The shells keep coming, each explosion marked by a flash of orange fire inside a black cloud that lingers in the still air, marking your path like breadcrumbs for the next wave of fighters. You watch Hell's Angels take a direct hit in the bomb bay. For a split second, nothing happens. Then the bombs detonate in a cataclysmic explosion that vaporizes the entire aircraft. Where there was a B-17 with 10 men aboard, now there's just an expanding cloud of fire and aluminum confetti. The bombers on either side are thrown sideways by the blast, their pilots fighting for control. Burning debris rains down through the formation, a propeller blade spinning like a lethal boomerang, a wing section tumbling end over end, unidentifiable pieces that were once part of an aircraft or its crew. The flak intensifies as you approach the target area. The Germans know exactly where you're headed. There are only so many targets worth risking a daylight raid. They've had since your coastal crossing to prepare, and prepare they have. The shell bursts merge into a nearly solid barrier of explosions. Flying into it feels like driving into a wall, except the wall is made of high explosives and steel fragments. Your formation closes up even tighter, each pilot fighting the urge to break away and dive for safety. That way lies death, alone, your meat for the fighters. Flak hit in the waist. Rodriguez's voice cuts through the intercom chatter. You turn to see Kowalski, the other waist gunner, down on the floor, bright red blood pooling beneath him. A piece of shrapnel the size of a playing card has punched through the fuselage and into his thigh, probably severing the femoral artery. You drop your gun and grab the first aid kit, but even as you apply a tourniquet, you know it's probably futile. At this altitude, with the blood frozen almost instantly, he's got minutes at most. His lips are already turning blue, shock, cold, and blood loss combining into a lethal cocktail. The temperature at your position is now -50 degrees. The blood from Kowalski's wound freezes into red crystals that blow around the waist compartment like deadly snow. You try to drag him forward to the radio room, where it's marginally warmer, but moving him causes more bleeding. His eyes are open but unfocused, looking at something beyond the aluminum skin of the bomber. You've seen that look before. By the time you get back to your gun, he's gone. Another empty bunk tonight. Another letter the chaplain will have to write. Historians argue about the effectiveness of strategic bombing, but they weren't standing at a waist gun position watching friends die. The flak doesn't care about strategy or politics or the greater good. It's purely democratic. Generals and privates bleed the same. Each burst is a roll of the dice, and you're rolling them hundreds of times on every mission. The mathematics are brutally simple. Fly enough missions and the dice will come up snake eyes. The only question is when. 2 minutes to initial point, the bombardier announces. The IP is where you stop evasive action and fly straight and level for the bomb run. 2 minutes of flying in a perfectly straight line while every anti-aircraft gun in Schweinfurt tries to kill you. The German gunners know this too. They're saving their best for last. The flak ahead is so thick it looks like you could walk on it. Black clouds with orange hearts, each one representing 4 pounds of high explosive and a prayer to whatever God looks after bomber crews. You grip your gun and prepare for the longest 2 minutes of your life. The flak suddenly stops, and the silence is more terrifying than the explosions. Every bomber crewman knows what this means. The fighters are coming back. The German controllers won't risk their own pilots in the flak barrage. So when the anti-aircraft fire ceases, it's time for the Jagdwaffe to earn their kill markers. You scan your sector frantically, knowing they're out there, climbing into attack position. The empty sky is a lie. Death is climbing towards you at 300 miles per hour. Bandits, 12 o'clock level. The nose gunner's call is immediately followed by his twin 50s opening up. You crane around, trying to spot the threat, and then you see them. An entire grupper of Focke-Wulf 190s. 30-plus fighters arranged in perfect attack formation. They're coming head-on at your level, which means they're targeting your squadron. The combined closing speed is over 500 miles per hour. In the space of a heartbeat, they go from specks to killers filling your windscreen. The attack develops with terrifying precision. The lead swarm of 4 fighters opens fire at maximum range, their cannon rounds sparking as they arc through the formation. The trick to surviving a head-on attack is not to flinch. Keep flying straight. Keep the formation tight. Make them fly through your combined defensive fire. But every instinct screams at you to duck, to turn, to do anything except fly straight into those winking muzzle flashes. The fighters grow larger impossibly fast, their yellow noses pointed directly at you like accusing fingers. Your pilot holds steady, but Yankee Doodle in the lead element doesn't. At the last second, her pilot flinches, banking left to avoid the incoming fighters. It's a fatal mistake. Breaking formation makes you a straggler, and stragglers die. Two 190s peel off and follow Yankee Doodle down, pouring cannon fire into her engines and fuel tanks. She begins burning immediately, fire streaming from both inboard engines. You watch her crew begin bailing out. 1, 2, 3 parachutes bloom white against the sky. Then the wing fails, folding upward like a broken bird, and the bomber tumbles into an uncontrolled spin. No more chutes appear. The main fighter formation flashes through your group faster than thought. 1 second they're head on, the next they're past, zoom climbing for another attack. But in that split second of their passing, the damage is done. Your element leader, Miss Liberty, has taken multiple 20mm cannon hits. Her nose compartment is simply gone, replaced by twisted metal and empty air. The pilots are fighting for control, but without the weight of the nose compartment, the bomber wants to climb into a stall. You watch, helpless, as they lose the battle. The B-17 rears up like a wounded horse, hangs on its tail for an impossible moment, then slides backward into a flat spin. Now comes the most terrifying part. The fighters aren't done. They've climbed above you and are rolling over for vertical attacks, using gravity to add to their already superior speed. You track one as it dives, trying to calculate the lead, but the angle is impossible. The German pilot knows exactly what he's doing, diving at a 70-degree angle that keeps him out of most defensive fire arcs until the last second. You squeeze off a burst anyway, watching your tracers fall behind his aircraft. He fires a long burst into Satan's sister in the high element, then pulls out so hard you can see the vapor trails forming on his wings from the G-forces. Fighter coming in, 7 o'clock low. You swing your gun around to engage a 109 boring in from below and behind. This is your job, your sector, your responsibility. The fighter is already firing, walking his rounds up the fuselage toward your position. You return fire, feeling the familiar buck of the 50 against your shoulder. Your tracers converge with his, 2 streams of death intersecting in the cold air. For a moment, you're looking directly at his spinner, seeing the flashes from his cannon. Then your rounds find their mark. The 109's engine explodes in a gout of black smoke and orange flame. The fighter snap rolls violently and falls away. Kill or damaged, you'll never know and claim neither. Survival is victory enough. The intercom is chaos. Tail gunner to pilot, I'm hit. Engineer to pilot, number 2 engine is losing oil pressure. Bombardier to pilot, we've got structural damage up here. Every position has problems, damage, casualties. Bourbon Betty has become a flying colander. Holes everywhere, systems failing, crew wounded or dead. But you're still flying, still holding formation, still boring inexorably toward the target. The German fighters regroup for another pass, and you can see more reinforcements arriving. 109s with belly tanks, indicating they've come from bases deeper in Germany. Rodriguez's voice cuts through. Engineer to crew, they're setting up for a company front attack. This is the Luftwaffe's latest tactic. Instead of attacking in small groups, an entire staffel of 12 fighters attacks line abreast, presenting a wall of firepower no bomber can survive. You watch in horrified fascination as 12 109s spread out in a perfect line, like cavalry preparing to charge. At a combined closing speed of 550 miles per hour, you have maybe 20 seconds before impact. Every gun in the formation that can bear opens fire, creating a curtain of tracers between you and the fighters. The company front attack is like watching a train wreck in slow motion. The fighters bore in, unwavering despite the defensive fire. Two bombers in the lead group simply disintegrate under the concentrated firepower, transformed instantly from aircraft to aluminum confetti. Another begins a long, smoking dive toward Earth. Your guns are overheating. You've been firing in long bursts. Something instructors warned against, but combat makes inevitable. The barrel is glowing cherry red, accuracy degrading with each round. But you keep firing because what else can you do? Suddenly, miraculously, the fighters break off, not from lack of ammunition or fuel, but because you're approaching the initial point. The flak guns are about to open up again, and the fighters know to clear the area. You've survived the fighter attacks, but at a cost. Looking around, you count the gaps in the formation. 8 bombers gone from your group alone. That's 80 men who won't be having dinner tonight. The math is relentless and brutal, but you're still alive, still flying, and still haven't even reached the target. The worst is yet to come. Your oxygen system picks the worst possible moment to fail. 1 second you're breathing normally through your mask. The next you're sucking on nothing but rubber-scented vacuum. The flow indicator shows 0. At 25,000 feet, you've just entered a race against time that you're physiologically incapable of winning. Without supplemental oxygen at this altitude, you have maybe 90 seconds before hypoxia turns your brain into useless jelly. The cruel irony is that the first symptom of oxygen starvation is euphoria. You'll feel wonderful just before you die. Waist to pilot, you gasp into the intercom, already feeling lightheaded. Oxygen failure at left waist position. Your words sound slurred even to yourself. Collins responds immediately. Can you make it to a walk-around bottle? The portable oxygen bottles are stashed at various points throughout the aircraft for exactly this emergency, but the nearest one is in the radio room, past Kowalski's frozen corpse, and through the narrow passage that seems to have stretched to infinite length. Your vision is already starting to tunnel, darkness creeping in from the edges like spilled ink. You unplug from the failed system and immediately feel the altitude hit you like a sledgehammer. The thin air contains only 1/4 the oxygen available at sea level. Your body, already stressed from cold and adrenaline, starts shutting down non-essential systems. Motor control goes first. Your hands feel like they belong to someone else as you fumble with your gun mount, trying to secure the weapon before moving. The metal is so cold it burns through your gloves, but the pain seems distant, unimportant. Everything is starting to feel unimportant, except the overwhelming desire to sit down and rest. Stumbling toward the radio room, you bounce off the fuselage walls like a drunk. Your legs aren't responding properly. The signals from your brain are getting lost somewhere between intention and action. Morrison, the radio operator, sees you coming and immediately realizes the problem. He's shouting something, pointing at the emergency oxygen bottle mounted on the bulkhead. But his words sound like they're coming through water. The distance to that green cylinder might as well be measured in light years rather than feet. The hypoxia euphoria hits full force. Suddenly, the whole situation seems hilarious. Here you are, 5 miles above Germany, surrounded by people trying to kill you, and you're about to die because a rubber hose got kinked. You start giggling, which uses up more of your precious remaining oxygen. Your fingernails are turning blue, cyanosis, the textbook symptom of oxygen deprivation. Some part of your brain that's still functional recognizes this as bad, but the rest of you doesn't care. You feel warm for the first time in hours, which is actually your body giving up on maintaining core temperature. Morrison grabs you and physically drags you to the walk-around bottle. His hands shake as he connects the mask. He's probably wondering if he's already too late. The first breath of oxygen hits your lungs like cold fire. It hurts. Everything hurts as your body systems start coming back online. The euphoria vanishes, replaced by a crushing headache and nausea that makes you want to vomit. Except vomiting in an oxygen mask at 25,000 feet is a good way to die by drowning in your own frozen puke. You breathe deep, forcing your lungs to work, forcing the oxygen into your bloodstream. The walk-around bottle contains about 10 minutes of oxygen at altitude. 10 minutes to figure out what's wrong with your system and fix it, or find another solution. Morrison helps you check the connections. Everything looks good at the mask end. The problem must be further back in the system. Maybe a frozen valve or a severed line from battle damage. You trace the rubber hose back to its connection point, fingers clumsy in the thick gloves, searching for the failure that nearly killed you. There, a piece of shrapnel has sliced through the line, small enough to miss in casual inspection, but deadly as any German fighter. "Can you patch it?" Morrison shouts over the engine noise. You pull out the emergency repair tape, 100-mile-an-hour tape, they call it, though you're doing almost twice that speed. The repair is ugly but functional. Multiple wraps of tape around the severed line. Praying it'll hold pressure, you test it gingerly, watching the flow indicator. The needle moves, barely, but it moves. It's not perfect, but it might keep you alive until you descend to breathable air, assuming you live that long. Back at your gun position, you plug into the patch system and try to calm your breathing. Using oxygen efficiently is an art. Breathe too fast and you'll use up your supply. Too slow and hypoxia creeps back. The tape repair is holding, but for how long? Every breath feels borrowed. You check your watch and realize the whole episode took less than 5 minutes, though it felt like hours. 5 minutes when you weren't scanning for fighters, weren't manning your gun, weren't doing your job. In those 5 minutes, anything could have happened. The intercom crackles. Bombardier to pilot, 1 minute to bomb release. You're still on the bomb run, still flying straight and level through the flak that's resumed with vengeance. Black puffs surround the formation again, each one a potential death sentence. But now you have a new worry. If your oxygen system fails again during combat, you're dead. No time for repairs when fighters are attacking. You'll have to choose between manning your gun and breathing. Some choice. Your hands are shaking, and not from the cold. Hypoxia leaves its mark, confusion, weakness, and the knowledge of how close you came. Historians debate the losses from combat versus accidents, but up here the distinction is meaningless. Dead from a German cannon shell or dead from a failed oxygen system, the result is the same. Your mother won't care about the technical details when she gets the telegram. The 8th Air Force is finding new ways to kill its crews faster than the Germans can invent them. "Bomb bay doors coming open," Patterson announces. Through the vibration in the airframe, you feel the massive doors swing wide, exposing the bombs to the slipstream. The drag increases immediately. The pilots fighting to maintain airspeed and altitude. Below, Schweinfurt's ball-bearing plants wait for their appointment with high explosives. In 30 seconds, you'll drop your bombs and turn for home, assuming your oxygen holds, assuming the fighters don't return, assuming 100 other things that could kill you don't happen first. You grip your gun and breathe shallow. Measured breaths. wondering if each one might be your last. Steady, steady, Patterson's voice is hypnotically calm as he hunches over the Norden bomb site, making minute adjustments. The entire bomber is now his to command through the autopilot connection. He's flying Bourbon Betty with microscopic precision, while Collins and Kaczynski sit with their hands off the controls, helpless passengers like the rest of you. The bomb run is the most vulnerable moment of the entire mission. No evasive action allowed, no deviation from course, just straight and level flight, while every German gun within range tries to blow you out of the sky. The flak is beyond intense now. It's apocalyptic. The Germans know exactly where you're headed and have concentrated every available gun around the ball-bearing plants. The sky is black with explosions, so thick you're flying through smoke from previous bursts. Each explosion rocks the bomber, throwing you against your gun mount. Shrapnel rattles against the aluminum skin like deadly hail. Through your window, you watch a piece of torn metal the size of a dinner plate spin past, missing your head by inches. The noise is overwhelming: explosions, engines, wind shriek, and underneath it all, the groan of aluminum under stress. Jesus Christ, look at that, someone shouts. A B-17 in the high squadron takes a direct hit just forward of the bomb bay. For a moment, it continues flying normally, as if the aircraft hasn't realized it's dead. Then it simply breaks in half, the forward section with the entire crew compartment separating from the wings and tail. Both pieces fall independently, the nose section spinning like a thrown football, the tail section flutter like a giant maple seed. No parachutes. At these G-forces, nobody could escape even if they were conscious. 10 more letters home. Your formation is starting to look ragged. Piccadilly Queen is trailing smoke from 2 engines, gradually losing altitude. Meathound has visible daylight through dozens of flak holes. Her tail surface is shredded. Every bomber is taking hits, but somehow most keep flying. The B-17's reputation for toughness is being written in blood and aluminum over Schweinfurt. These aircraft are taking damage that would down any fighter 10 times over, yet they drone on toward the target, piloted by kids who should be in college, not commanding flying fortresses through hell. 10 seconds to release, Patterson intones. The bombardier's compartment in the nose is fully exposed. Nothing but plexiglass between him and the flak bursts. He's the coolest man in the aircraft, making final adjustments while staring death in the face. The bomb bay is open, creating massive drag, making the bomber wallow like a whale. Through the radio room window, you can glimpse the bombs hanging in their shackles. 10 500-pounders waiting to join the rain of destruction falling on Schweinfurt. Each bomb has been hand-loaded, fused, and checked by ground crews who'll never see where their work ends up. A massive explosion off your left wing sends Bourbon Betty skidding sideways through the air. Denver Darling has taken a direct hit in the bomb bay, her full load of bombs detonating simultaneously. The explosion is beyond description, a ball of fire that engulfs 2 other bombers flying nearby. One emerges streaming fire from every opening, clearly doomed. The other has simply vanished, vaporized, reduced to atoms in an instant. The shockwave hits you like a physical punch, rattling your teeth and making your ears ring even through the helmet. "Bombs away," Patterson calls, and you feel the bomber leap upward as 5,000 pounds of high explosives leave the racks. Through the open bomb bay, you catch a glimpse of the bombs falling, tumbling at first, then stabilizing as their fins catch the air. Hundreds of bombs from your formation merge into a deadly steel rain. Below, The ball-bearing plants are already erupting in flames from the lead group's attacks. The Germans are probably in their shelters, but some poor bastards are manning the flak guns, standing their ground while death falls from above. Bomb bay doors closing. Pilot, you have the aircraft. Control returns to Collins, who immediately begins a gentle turn away from the target. Not too sharp. Maintain formation integrity, but enough to complicate the flak gunner's calculations. The relief is palpable. You've done what you came to do. The bombs are gone. Now all you have to do is fly 400 miles back to England through the most heavily defended airspace on Earth. Simple. But the flak doesn't stop. If anything, it intensifies as the gunners throw up a barrage to catch the turning formation. A burst explodes directly beneath Bourbon Betty, and suddenly Rodriguez is screaming over the intercom. Engineer hit! Engineer hit! The top turret has taken a direct hit from shrapnel, and Rodriguez is down, blood streaming from multiple wounds. The pilot orders Morrison to check on him, but moving through the bomber during combat is like trying to walk through a washing machine. Every explosion throws you against sharp edges, exposed frames, protruding equipment. You're helpless at your position, scanning for fighters that are surely regrouping for another attack. The sky around Schweinfurt is a three-dimensional battlefield with death coming from every angle. Flak from below, fighters from above and the sides. And always the cold trying to kill you slowly, while everything else tries to kill you quickly. Your patched oxygen line is holding, barely. Each breath tastes of rubber and fear. The temperature has dropped even further if that's possible. Ice crystals form from your breath, creating a small snowstorm inside the fuselage. Looking back toward the target, you see the results of your work. Schweinfurt is burning, smoke columns rising thousands of feet into the air. The ball-bearing plants are clearly hit hard. Secondary explosions ripple through the industrial complex as stored materials cook off. For a moment, you feel a savage satisfaction. Then you remember the cost. Your formation went in with 54 bombers. Quick count shows maybe 35 still flying, and several of those are clearly damaged beyond hope of making it home. 20% losses in 10 minutes of bomb run. At this rate, the 8th Air Force will run out of crews before the Germans run out of targets. The relief of bombs away lasts exactly as long as it takes for the German fighters to reappear. They've been waiting, circling like vultures, letting the flak guns have their turn. Now, with your bomb load gone and fuel burned down, you might think you'd be faster, more agile. You'd be wrong. The battle damage has taken its toll. Holes in the wings disturb the airflow. Dead engines create asymmetric thrust, and control surfaces shredded by flak make the bomber handle like a shopping cart with a broken wheel. You're easier prey now than when you arrived. Fighters, 2 o'clock high. Looks like the whole Luftwaffe. The tail gunner's call sends ice through your veins, colder than the ambient temperature. This isn't an exaggeration. The Germans have assembled what looks like 100 fighters for your withdrawal. They know you're hurt, low on ammunition, exhausted. The return trip is when they harvest the cripples, pick off the stragglers, turn survival statistics into scrap metal. You check your ammunition, maybe 200 rounds left, 4 or 5 good bursts if you're disciplined. After that, you'll be a spectator at your own funeral. The first wave comes in from the front quarter, trying to knock out more bombardiers and pilots, without a bomb load to deliver. Colonel Harrison orders evasive action, gentle banks and altitude changes that make the fighters' gunnery solutions more complex. But gentle is relative when you're flying in close formation. Bombers slide past each other with yards to spare, props churning the air into invisible turbulence that tosses the aircraft around like toys. One mistake, one moment of inattention, and 2 bombers become none. Meathound is going down. You watch as the bomber that survived the bomb run finally succumbs to accumulated damage. She's been flying on 2 engines, gradually losing altitude, and now the fighters swarm her like antibodies attacking an infection. 20mm cannon shells sparkle along her fuselage, walking from nose to tail. Fire erupts from the bomb bay, probably hydraulic fluid igniting. The crew starts bailing out, tiny figures tumbling through the air, parachutes blossoming white against the smoke-darkened sky. You count 6 chutes. 4 men didn't make it out. An FW-190 curves toward your position, approaching from 7 o'clock low, your territory. You track him with your nearly frozen hands, waiting for the range to close. No ammunition to waste on long shots. The German pilot is good, jinking slightly to throw off your aim, but his approach is predictable. He needs to steady up to fire accurately. At 300 yards, you squeeze the trigger. The gun bucks, sending a stream of tracers converging on the fighter. You see hits sparkle on his engine cowling, and suddenly black smoke erupts from beneath his hood. The 190 breaks off, trailing oil, diving away. Not a kill. He'll probably make it home. But he's out of this fight. Morrison's voice crackles through the intercom. Radio to crew. Rodriguez didn't make it. The news hits like a physical blow. Rodriguez, who had 19 missions under his belt, who was going to use his GI Bill to open an auto shop in Tucson, who showed everyone pictures of his kid sister at every opportunity. Now he's another casualty statistic, bleeding out in the top turret while the bomber flies on. The mission continues. It always continues. The dead stay where they fall until landing, if you make it that far. Your ammunition counter shows 150 rounds remaining. Around you, the air battle rages with an intensity that makes the morning's combat seem like a warm-up. B-17s are going down at a terrifying rate. Yankee Gal explodes when fighters ignite her Tokyo tanks. Auxiliary fuel cells in the wingtips that turn the bomber into a flying Molotov cocktail. Berlin or bust loses her entire tail section to concentrated cannon fire, entering a flat spin from which recovery is impossible. Each loss is 10 men, 10 families, 10 empty places at dinner tables across America. A Messerschmitt 110 night fighter appears from nowhere, twin engine, heavily armed, usually used for bomber interception in darkness, but pressed into daylight service for this maximum effort. He's carrying rockets under his wings, and you watch in horror as he ripple fires them into your formation. The rockets are inaccurate but terrifying, leaving corkscrew smoke trails as they streak past. One finds its mark on Louisiana Belle, exploding against her number 3 engine. The engine disintegrates, taking half the wing with it. The bomber flips inverted and dives vertically. No chutes. The G-forces probably pinned everyone inside. Your own situation is deteriorating. Number 2 engine is running rough. Oil pressure dropping steadily. The supercharger on number 4 is making unhealthy noises. Half your control surfaces are damaged, making formation flying exhausting for Collins and Kaczynski. They're fighting the aircraft constantly, muscles cramping from the effort. Your oxygen system is barely functioning. Every breath is a struggle. And you're lightheaded despite the pure oxygen. Ice has formed everywhere, adding weight and disturbing airflow. Bourbon Betty is dying by degrees, and you're still 300 miles from home. Bandits breaking off. Someone notices the fighters peeling away, climbing and diving toward Germany, not from mercy. They're simply out of fuel and ammunition. They've done their job, carved up your formation, left you bleeding. Now it's up to distance and mechanical failure to finish what they started. You're down to 80 rounds, barely enough for one good burst. Other gunners report similar states. If the fighters come back, you'll be throwing empty shell casings at them. Looking around, you try to count survivors. Your squadron of 6 is down to 3. The group that left England with 21 bombers might have 12 still flying. The entire 8th Air Force maximum effort that launched over 300 bombers will be lucky to get 200 home. And this is victory. This is strategic bombing proving its worth. The ball-bearing plants are burning, sure, but at what cost? You'll be back, if not to Schweinfurt, then to Regensburg or Berlin or some other German city that needs to be erased. The equation is simple. They can rebuild factories faster than you can replace crews. Bourbon Betty is now a wounded bird trying to fly 250 miles on 3.5 engines, riddled with holes, systems failing, crew dead or dying. The formation, what's left of it, has descended to 18,000 feet, trading altitude for airspeed and better engine performance. Even this low altitude requires oxygen, but at least your patch system is holding. For now. Everything on this bomber is for now. Temporary fixes, emergency procedures, prayers wrapped in 100-mile-an-hour tape. Colin's voice comes over the intercom, strained with exhaustion. Pilot to crew, we're losing hydraulic pressure. Landing gear might be a problem. Understatement of the year. No hydraulics means no brakes. Possibly no gear extension. Definitely no flaps for landing. Assuming you make it back to England. Assuming the engines keep running. Assuming the German fighters are really gone and not just refueling for one last massacre. You've learned that assumption is another word for wishful thinking at 18,000 feet. Number 2 engines had it, Kozinski announces, and through your window you watch the propeller windmill to a stop. 3 engines now, and number 4 is making sounds like a cement mixer full of bolts. The asymmetric thrust makes the bomber want to turn constantly, requiring massive rudder input to fly straight. Collins and Kozinski are taking turns wrestling the controls, their legs cramping from standing on the rudder pedals. Flying a damaged B-17 is like arm wrestling for hours, exhausting, painful, and you can't let up for a second or you lose. You're part of a stream of damaged bombers now, all heading northwest, all losing altitude, all trailing smoke or glycol or hydraulic fluid. It's a parade of the damned, each aircraft carrying its own story of disaster. Some are in worse shape than Bourbon Betty. Homesick Angel is flying on 2 engines, barely maintaining altitude. Thor's Hammer has no tail gunner position left, just twisted metal and wind. Everyone's hurt, everyone's limping, everyone's calculating fuel versus distance versus altitude in the grim mathematics of survival. A B-17 ahead suddenly noses over into a dive. No radio call, no explanation. Just a bomber that's given up trying. Maybe the pilots are dead. Maybe the controls finally failed. Maybe they just ran out of whatever keeps you going when everything says stop. You watch it fall, waiting for parachutes that never appear. The aircraft disappears into the undercast. Another aluminum coffin for the North Sea. That's 37 bombers you've personally seen go down today. 370 men. The numbers stop meaning anything after a while. Fighters, 4 o'clock high. Your blood freezes, hands fumbling for the gun triggers. But these aren't Germans, these are P-47s. The blessed little friends returning to shepherd you home. They're at extreme range, flying on fumes, but they're here, The relief is physical, like a weight lifting off your chest. The German fighters that have been shadowing your formation, waiting for one more opportunity, peel away and dive for the deck. Even the Luftwaffe won't tangle with fresh thunderbolts. But the P-47s can't fix your engines, can't patch your hydraulics, can't bring back Rodriguez or Kowalski. They can only escort you to the English coast. Then they too will need to find somewhere to land before their tanks run dry. This war is all about fuel. Who has it? Who doesn't? Who runs out first? Right now, you're showing 400 gallons remaining, which should be enough if the winds are favorable. Should be, in theory, if number 4 engine doesn't quit, if you don't have to go around on landing, if, you're down to 12,000 feet now. The Dutch coast visible ahead. Flak positions open up. Nothing like Schweinfurt. Just harassment fire to remind you that the Germans own everything from Norway to Spain. Black puffs bloom around the formation, but they're almost insulting in their sparseness after what you've been through. A few bombers jinx half-heartedly. Most just drone on. Too tired or too damaged to care. Let them shoot. Either they hit you or they don't. You're beyond fear now. Running on autopilot like the bomber itself. Pilot to crew. Number 4 is overheating badly. We might have to shut it down. 2 engines. A B-17 can fly on 2 engines. Every pilot knows this because Boeing says so. What Boeing doesn't say is that it can fly on 2 engines when it's clean, undamaged, and light, not when it's shot to pieces, covered in ice, and dragging through the air like a brick. You do the mental math. Current altitude 12,000 feet, losing maybe 500 feet per minute on 2 engines. 50 miles to England. You'll hit the water 50 miles short. Time to start throwing everything overboard. Jettison all loose equipment, Collins orders. Guns, ammunition, anything not bolted down. You hate to lose the .50 caliber. It saved your life multiple times today, but it weighs 84 pounds the bomber can't carry. Out it goes, tumbling through the grey sky. Ammunition boxes follow. Then oxygen bottles, flak vests, anything with weight. Other bombers are doing the same. A rain of military equipment falling into the North Sea. Some Dutch fisherman is going to have an interesting catch. The engineers panel is a Christmas tree of warning lights. Oil pressure gauges reading 0. Cylinder head temperatures in the red. Fuel pumps failing. Bourbon Betty is flying on willpower and not much else. Through your window, you can see rivets popping from overstressed skin. The aluminum literally coming apart at the seams. The bomber is disintegrating in slow motion, and it's a race between structural failure and reaching England. You've never wanted to see anything as much as you want to see those white cliffs right now. Morrison is on the radio, calling ahead to alert rescue services. Air-sea rescue, air-sea rescue. This is Bourbon Betty declaring emergency. Position approximately 50 miles east of Great Yarmouth. Altitude 8,000 feet and descending. 2 engines out. Possible ditching. His voice is calm, professional, like he's ordering groceries instead of potentially his own funeral. The British rescue services are good. They've pulled hundreds of crews from the Channel. But November water is cold, and damaged bombers don't ditch gently. They cartwheel, break up, sink in minutes. Your Mae West seems suddenly very small. The English coast appears through the haze like a mirage. Those white cliffs of Dover that the song talks about looking more beautiful than any woman you've ever seen. But you're not heading for Dover. You're aiming for the first available piece of British soil, preferably with a runway attached. The fuel gauges are bouncing on empty. Number 4 engine is trailing black smoke, and number 1 is making sounds that suggest it's about to join its dead companions. Altitude, 5,000 feet and dropping. The math still doesn't work. But somehow Bourbon Betty keeps flying, defying physics through pure mechanical stubbornness. Great Yarmouth beacon in sight. Chen reports from his navigator's position. His voice is hoarse from breathing oxygen for 7 hours, from calling out fighter positions, from trying to sound confident when everything suggests panic. Recommend heading 270 for emergency field at Hethel. An emergency field means somewhere damaged bombers go to die. Crash trucks standing by, medical personnel ready, and most importantly, a runway you can reach. Maybe. The fuel gauges have stopped making sense. Needles bouncing between empty and quarter full as the tanks run dry and fuel sloshes in the lines. You pass over the coast at 3,000 feet, and suddenly everyone's talking at once. We made it. Thank Christ. Shut up and keep watching for fighters. The relief is premature. Plenty of bombers have made it to England only to crash short of the runway. But crossing from enemy territory to friendly airspace feels like passing from death to life. Below, you can see home guard positions, anti-aircraft batteries, thankfully not shooting, and the patchwork of English fields that looked so foreign 2 months ago and now looks like home. Number 1 engine coughs, sputters, and dies. The propeller windmills briefly. Then the crew feathers it to reduce drag. 2 engines now, both on the same side, making the bomber want to roll inverted. Collins and Kaczynski are fighting for control. Both feet on the rudder pedals, arms straining against the yoke. Come on, baby, Collins mutters over the intercom, forgetting his mic is hot. Just a little further. Don't quit on me now. He's talking to the bomber like it's alive, which after 7 hours of combat, maybe it is. Maybe machines absorb something from the men who fly them. Hethel in sight, 10 miles, Chen announces. You can see it, a proper airfield with beautiful concrete runways, not some grass strip where you'd ground loop for sure. But 10 miles at your current descent rate means you need another 2,000 feet of altitude you don't have. Collins makes the call. Crew, prepare for possible crash landing. Waist gunners, get forward to the radio room. Tail gunner, get out of the turret. Standard procedure. In a crash. The tail breaks off, and the waist is a crush zone. The radio room, reinforced by the bomb bay structure, offers the best chance of survival, but moving through the bomber now is like navigating a tornado. The aircraft is bucking and yawing as the pilots fight for control. You unplug from your oxygen, unnecessary at this altitude, and start forward. Kowalski's body has frozen to the floor, and you have to step over him. Sorry, buddy. Rodriguez is still slumped in the top turret, beyond help. The radio room is crowded. Morrison, Chen, Patterson, and now you and the tail gunner, Williams, all trying to find something to brace against. Through the radio room window, you can see the altimeter unwinding. 2,000 feet, 1,500, 1,000. Number 3's failing. Kaczynski's voice has an edge of panic now. The last functioning engine is giving up. Oil pressure gone. Probably running on the last dregs of lubricant. The propeller is still turning, but producing more drag than thrust. You're now in a 65,000-pound glider designed by someone who didn't believe in gliding. The airfield is still 5 miles away. The math is simple and brutal. You're not going to make it. Below. English countryside scrolls past. Stone walls, hedgerows, sheep that are about to have their day ruined. There, Patterson points through the scratched plexiglass. That field, it's not much, maybe 800 yards of relatively flat pasture, but it's better than the trees and buildings everywhere else. Collins sees it too, banking gently toward this last hope. Crash positions, he orders. You curl up, head between your knees, hands clasped behind your neck, trying to make yourself small. The aircraft is strangely quiet now, with all engines dead. Just the whistle of wind through flak holes and the groan of overstressed metal. The field rushes up impossibly fast. Through your fingers, you see the ground proximity, individual sheep scattering, a stone wall that Collins barely clears, then impact. The first touch is almost gentle, the wheels kissing the grass. Then the nose gear collapses, probably the hydraulics finally giving up, and the nose digs in. The world goes insane. You're thrown forward, then sideways, then up as the bomber cartwheels. Metal screams, tears, buckles, glass shatters. Something heavy hits you in the back. The radio room, your sanctuary, comes apart like a house of cards. Then, sudden stillness. You're hanging sideways, still strapped in by your safety belt. Fuel smell everywhere. 100-octane aviation gas, looking for a spark to turn this wreck into a funeral pyre. Out, out, out. Someone's screaming. You pop your belt and fall, landing on what used to be the side of the fuselage. Through a tear in the metal, you see grey English sky. Beautiful, beautiful sky at ground level where it belongs. You crawl toward the light, over torn metal and broken equipment, emerging from Bourbon Betty's corpse like being born again. Outside, you count heads. Collins and Kaczynski, both bleeding from head wounds but walking. Patterson holding his arm at a weird angle. Morrison limping. Chen unconscious but breathing. Williams the tail gunner, miraculously unhurt. 6 survivors from a crew of 10. Rodriguez and Kowalski's bodies still in the wreck. The bombardier and navigator, who died over Schweinfurt. As statistics go, it's actually not bad, 6 out of 10. The Air Force would call this a successful mission. You look back at Bourbon Betty, broken in 3 pieces across a sheep pasture, and wonder how any of you survived. Then the adrenaline wears off, your legs give out, and you sit down hard in the English mud. You're alive, somehow, impossibly. You're alive. The sheep farmer who owns the field arrives first, running across his pasture with the determined stride of a man who's seen too many bombers crash land in his neighborhood. He's maybe 60, wearing Wellington boots and a flat cap, carrying a shotgun that he quickly sets aside when he sees your Americans. "You lads all right then?" he asks, in that understated British way, as if finding a 4-engine bomber scattered across his field is just another Thursday. Behind him, his wife appears with a thermos of tea, because of course she does. This is England. Civilization continues even when the sky is falling. Within minutes, the scene transforms from pastoral quiet to organized chaos. Home Guard troops arrive on bicycles, looking disappointingly middle-aged compared to your Hollywood expectations. Then come the vehicles, ambulances, fire trucks, RAF recovery team, and inevitably, the intelligence officers who need to debrief you while your memory is fresh and your hands are still shaking. Chen is loaded onto a stretcher, conscious now but groggy. Patterson's arm is definitely broken. The rest of you are walking wounded, cuts, bruises, maybe some cracked ribs. Nothing that will keep you out of the air for more than a few days. A RAF flight surgeon checks you over, shining a light in your eyes that seems unnecessarily bright. "Bit of hypoxia, eh?" he says. noting your still blue fingernails. You're lucky. See crews come back vegetables from oxygen deprivation, brain damage, you know. Lucky, that word again. You think about Kowalski and Rodriguez, still in the wreck. Think about the 30-plus bombers that didn't make it back. Think about your oxygen line failing at 25,000 feet. If that's lucky, you'd hate to see unlucky. But you nod and accept the diagnosis because what else can you do? The debrief happens in the back of a truck converted into a mobile interrogation center. An intelligence officer with tired eyes and a 3-day beard asks questions while a sergeant transcribes. Tell me about the fighter attacks. What markings did you observe? What tactics? You try to remember details through the fog of exhaustion and adrenaline crash. Yellow noses meant JG-26. The company front attacks. The rockets from that Mi-110. It all blurs together into a montage of muzzle flashes and burning bombers. How do you explain controlled terror lasting 7 hours? Bomb damage assessment, he continues. You describe the smoke over Schweinfurt, the secondary explosions, the fires visible from 40 miles away. He nods, makes notes. Tomorrow, photo reconnaissance will confirm what you already know. The ball-bearing plants are hurt but not destroyed. You'll be going back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but eventually. The Germans will repair what they can, disperse what they can't, and the whole bloody dance will continue. The intelligence officer knows it. You know it. Everyone knows it, except maybe the folks back home reading sanitized newspaper accounts. They load you onto a truck for the ride back to your base. The England countryside rolls past, impossibly green and peaceful. Farmers working their fields wave at the convoy. Children run alongside until their mothers call them back. It's like driving through a postcard, except you're covered in hydraulic fluid and blood, some yours, some not, and you smell like cordite and fear sweat. The disconnect is jarring. How can this peaceful world exist simultaneously with what you just experienced? How can those farmers be worried about their turnip crop while you were watching friends burn alive at 25,000 feet? Back at base, the scene is grimly familiar. Ground crews standing around empty hardstands, counting the bombers that aren't coming back. The chaplain making his rounds, collecting personal effects from empty lockers. The mess sergeant trying to figure out how many meals to prepare when nobody knows how many mouths need feeding. Your squadron area looks like a ghost town. Of 6 bombers that left this morning, 2 made it back. Yours barely counts. Scattered across a sheep farm 30 miles away. The other, Jersey bounce, landed with 2 engines out and her tail gunner dead. You report to the squadron commander, Major Hartley, who looks like he's aged 5 years since morning. Glad you made it back, he says, and means it. He's writing letters to next of kin, a stack of them on his desk. We're standing down tomorrow. Need to assess aircraft availability. Aircraft availability, a euphemism for we don't have enough bombers left to mount a mission. You'll get a day to sleep, write your own letters, pretend life is normal. Then replacement crews will arrive, fresh from training, eager and terrified. You'll fly with them. Try to teach them in a few hours what took you weeks to learn through blood and error. The barracks is too quiet. Rodriguez's bunk stripped bare. Kowalski's too. Their footlockers will be shipped home. Contents carefully censored. No blood-stained items. Nothing that might upset Mom. The letters they wrote before the mission, everyone writes one, will be mailed. If you're reading this, they all begin. Yours is still in your footlocker, sealed, addressed to that girl in Iowa. You'll tear it up tonight and write another one tomorrow, and the day after that, until the day you don't come back and someone else watches the chaplain collect your things. Dinner is surreal. Spam and powdered potatoes have never tasted so good. You're alive to taste them. The mess hall is half empty. Conversations muted. Everyone's doing the math, calculating odds. 7 missions down, 18 to go. At today's loss rate, your chances of completing a tour are essentially 0. But nobody says it out loud. Instead, you talk about the P-47 showing up just in time, about Colin's miracle landing, about anything except the obvious truth that you're all dead men on borrowed time. That night, lying in your cot, you can't stop shivering despite 2 blankets. It's not the cold. The potbelly stove is actually working for once. It's the adrenaline finally wearing off. Your body processing 7 hours of sustained terror. Every time you close your eyes, you see fighters coming head on. Flak bursts blooming like deadly flowers. Bombers transforming into fireballs. Sleep, when it finally comes, brings no peace. You're back at 25,000 feet. Oxygen failing. Fighters attacking. And this time the engines don't restart. You wake gasping, sucking in lungfuls of sea-level air like a drowning man. Dawn is still hours away, but you're done sleeping. Tomorrow, actually today now, you'll do it all again. The mission board already has your name on it for tomorrow. Not Schweinfurt. Even the 8th Air Force isn't that cruel. But Bremen, another city, another set of factories, another opportunity to test the statistics. They've given you a new bomber, straight from the factory, still smelling of fresh paint and hydraulic fluid. No nose art yet, no personality, no accumulated luck, good or bad. The crew is a mix of survivors and replacements. 2 new waist gunners who look impossibly young, voices cracking when they introduce themselves. A new engineer who claims he's flown 20 missions but has that 1,000-yard stare that says otherwise. You run through the pre-flight checks mechanically, muscle memory taking over. Test the oxygen system 3 times. You'll never trust those rubber hoses again. Check the gun mounts, the ammunition feed, the emergency exits. The new kids watch you with a mixture of awe and fear. To them, you're a veteran now. Someone who's been to Schweinfurt and lived. They pepper you with questions. What's it really like? How do you know when fighters are coming? Is it true about the flak being so thick you could walk on it? You give them the answers you wish someone had given you 7 missions ago. Stay alert. Trust your training. Don't think too much. The briefing is identical to yesterday except for the target. Same red yarn stretching across the map. Same groans from the crews. Same promises of fighter escort that everyone knows will turn back at the German border. The intelligence officer drones through the same warnings about flak concentrations and fighter bases. You've heard it all before. The only thing that changes is the number of empty seats in the briefing room. Yesterday, there were 240 men here. Today, maybe 180. Tomorrow, who knows? The replacement pipeline from the States is full. They tell you, fresh crews arriving weekly, fresh meat for the grinder, walking to the new bomber. You pass the scattered remains of Bourbon Betty being loaded onto flatbed trucks. They'll salvage what they can. Engines that might have a few hours left. Instruments that aren't smashed. Maybe a few thousand rounds of ammunition. The rest will be melted down, turned into new bombers or shell casings or whatever else the war machine needs. Nothing is wasted except lives. Those are apparently in endless supply. The farmer has already ploughed around the crash site, determined to get his winter wheat in despite the inconvenience of aviation aluminum in his field. As you climb aboard the new bomber, nobody's even given it a name yet. You notice something. Your hands aren't shaking. Somewhere between yesterday's terror and today's preparation, you've crossed a line. The fear is still there. Probably always will be, but it's been compressed into a hard knot you can carry. You're not brave. Brave would be not being afraid. You're something else, something they don't have a word for. Functional despite terror, mobile in the face of death, or maybe just too tired to care anymore. The engines start with the same explosive cough, settling into the same bone-rattling rhythm as you taxi out. You see ground crews preparing other bombers, loading bombs that might or might not find their targets, fuel that might or might not get you home. The cycle continues with mechanical inevitability. Tomorrow, Berlin, next week, Hamburg, next month, if you live that long, maybe Schweinfurt again. The targets change, but the routine remains. Wake too early, dress in too many layers, fly too high, watch friends die, drop bombs, try to make it home. Repeat until you finish your tour or join the growing list of names on the memorial wall. Taking your position at the waist gun, you look out at the English countryside one more time. Peaceful fields, stone churches, people living normal lives. In a few hours, you'll be back over Germany, playing the same deadly game with different stakes. The fighters will come, the flak will bloom, bombers will fall. Some of you will make it back, some won't. The math remains constant and cruel. But for now, in these last moments before takeoff, you allow yourself one small luxury, the memory of that farmer's wife with her thermos of tea, proof that somewhere civilization continues, that there's still a world worth fighting for. Pilot to crew, ready for takeoff. Collins's replacement, a captain named Anderson who seems competent enough, runs through the checklist. You settle into position, check your oxygen flow one more time, and prepare for another 8 hours of frozen hell. The bomber lurches forward, gathering speed, and suddenly you're airborne again, climbing toward that same hostile sky, carrying another load of death to deliver somewhere in Germany. The engines drone their familiar song, and you realize with something between horror and acceptance that this feels normal now. This is your life, measured in missions, calculated in odds, lived at 25,000 feet. Through your window, England falls away, shrinking to a patchwork of fields and hopes. Ahead, the sky is clear, deceptively peaceful. But you know what's waiting up there in the sub-stratosphere. The cold that kills, the fighters that hunt, the flak that never misses eventually. You grip your gun and watch for the first signs of condensation trails that mark your bomber stream. Another day at the office, another date with statistics, another chance to discover whether today's your day to join Rodriguez and Kowalski and all the others who've already paid their dues. The girl in Iowa writes that she's proud of you, that she tells everyone her boyfriend is a hero flying bombing missions over Germany. If she only knew the truth, that heroes are just frightened kids who haven't died yet, that courage is just fear that's learned to function, that the only thing separating you from the empty bunks back at base is luck that has to hold for 18 more missions. But you'll write back tonight, if you make it back, and tell her what she wants to hear, that you're fine, that the war's going well, that you'll be home soon. The same lies everyone tells because the truth is too heavy to mail across an ocean. The altimeter winds upward, 5,000 feet, 10,000, 15,000. Soon you'll be back in that aluminum tube at the edge of space, where death comes in multiple flavors and survival is a mathematical improbability. But that's hours away. For now, you're just climbing, engine strong, crew alive, hope still possible. You touch the photo in your pocket, that Iowa girl with her Midwest smile, and make the same bargain with God that everyone makes. Just get me through today. Tomorrow can take care of itself. The bomber climbs on, carrying you back toward the war, back toward the odds, back toward whatever fate waits at 25,000 feet over Germany. And so, my friend, as our story winds down and the engines fade to a distant hum, you find yourself understanding something profound about courage. It's not the absence of fear. It's continuing when every cell in your body screams to quit. Those young men, barely out of their teens, climbed into aluminum death traps day after day, knowing the mathematics of survival were stacked against them. They flew through temperatures that would kill in minutes, through flak that turned the sky black, through fighter attacks that came from every angle. They watched friends burn, freeze, explode, and disappear. Yet still they climbed aboard for the next mission. Why? Not for glory. There's no glory in dying at 25,000 feet. Not for country, really, though they'd say that's why. They did it for each other, for the crew, for the empty bunks that needed to mean something. They did it because someone had to, and they were there. As you drift off to sleep tonight, warm in your bed, breathing easily at sea level, remember them. Remember that your comfortable world exists because 19-year-olds once flew through hell in the sky, mission after mission, until they completed their tour or became another telegram home. Their aluminum chariots are gone now, recycled into cars and cans and forgotten things. But their courage echoes still, a reminder that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when history demands it. Sweet dreams, and may your slumber be peaceful. You've earned it after flying with these brave souls through the frozen hell of a bombing mission in 1943. The engines are quiet now, the guns are still, and somewhere in Iowa, a girl still waits for a letter from a boy who's learning that heroes are just scared kids who keep showing up.